Today on Personal Injury Court.
Oh, your son struck his head like that?
He did, Your Honor.
I couldn't stop it, and I couldn't control it.
And when a bone moves forward, it can pull the nerves with it. It can tear a nerve. That can cause anything from paralysis to death.
So this is a very serious injury.
Very serious.
You're asking this court to award you $2.2 million.
Being the guy that I am with safety, here's the pamphlet that I sent out. I did my part. It is not my fault.
This has got to scare you to death.
It's the parent's worst nightmare.
Judge Gino Brogdon spent 10 years on the bench ruling on cases worth billions of dollars. Now he presides over some of the largest claims in TV history. This is Personal Injury Court.
Good day, everyone. This is the matter of Campbell versus Gold. Ms. Campbell, it's my understanding from the documents that you submitted to this court that you are suing Mr. Gold for injuries that your son sustained while your son was at Mr. Gold's lake house. You're asking this court to award you $100,000 for your son's medical expenses, $100,000 for his future medical expenses, and $2 million for pain and suffering, for a total award of $2.2 million. Is that correct?
Yes, Your Honor.
And your son will be joining us here from the hospital. My understanding is he's not able to come to court physically. Is that true?
That is correct, Your Honor.
Okay, now, Mr. Gold, you had the lake house. Miss Campbell's son was there. You believe that you gave them everything they needed to be safe and that he just didn't handle it right and he's responsible for his own injuries.
That's correct, Your Honor.
All right, let's get into the legal sauce. Now, Miss Campbell, how did your son come to Mr. Gold's lake house?
Your Honor, my son Brian has played for Coach Gold, Mr. Gold, his basketball team for the last 10 years, since he was 7. I'm a single mom, and we do not have extra money to go on vacation. Coach Gold had invited the entire basketball team up to his lake house for fun, food, fellowship, water sports. My son is a great basketball player as well, but he loves the outdoors, and we were just excited just to spend time with one another, really have a family vacation.
So Mr. Gold coached your son?
Yes, he did for 10 years.
That's a long time. Coach, you remember raising these guys as basketball players?
Your Honor, they're like family to me.
Because I know my boys had a bunch of coaches. They were like second dads. Were you like a second dad to Miss Campbell's son?
Yeah, you could really say that.
So how did the boys get to your lake house that day? What brought everybody there?
We had a tournament, so I figured after that tournament, let's get everybody together.
I've been to many of those.
Celebrate that type of thing. So, we had everybody up.
So, Ms. Campbell, how did your son get injured?
Your Honor, that day I was in charge of the food. Coach Gold had put me and another mom in charge of feeding, I believe it's 12 boys, teenage boys.
That requires a lot of food.
Right? So
Yes, ma'am.
Veronica, my daughter, her and Brian, went to the marina with the other guys. They were going to be riding the watercrafts.
Okay.
He left, bye, Mom, love you, be careful, what any parent would say. So we get to busy separating the cheeses, and all of a sudden, I believe his name is Terrence, opens the door, runs in, and says, there's been an accident. Well, right then, what any parent would do, I can't even remember. I know I threw this back.
Your heart must have sunk.
Boom, I was out the door.
Yes, ma'am.
Running. As soon as I got there, someone said it was Brian. It was my Brian. So I did what any Christian woman would do. I got to my knees and prayed to Jesus, Lord, please don't take him, because he looked dead. Your Honor, he was not moving.
Yes, ma'am. I know that had to be
No
tough.
parent should have to see that, no.
Yes, ma'am. Now, Ms. Campbell, you submitted a video to this court where one of the kids actually caught this on tape, right?
Yes.
Well, is it okay that I play it right now?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, let's put it up on the plasma. Here it is. Oh, whoa. Your son struck his head like that?
He did, Your Honor.
Now, Mr. Gold, you were there that day, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
How did you know something? Well, first of all, where were you when this happened?
As I get everybody checked in, once I get to the back of the line, I now see Brian, and he's going pretty fast. Before I could even yell out or blow the horn, anything, in a matter of seconds, he hit the sand dune and he just, I could still hear it.
That was ugly. That made a pit in my stomach.
Yeah, that's
Now,
what
Ms.
it was.
Campbell, Your son Brian is still at Good Samaritan Hospital. He was not able to physically come to court. So Brian, can you hear me?
Yes, Your Honor.
Tell me what happened out there.
When my sister got a phone call, I hopped on the watercraft by myself and I hit the throttle and I started heading away from the dock. And I liked cutting tight turns because I liked spraying the water up on my friends, and it was just a good time. But then all of a sudden, I couldn't stop it and I couldn't control it, and there was a sandbar right in front of me, and I started heading straight for it, and I blacked out, and that's the last thing I remember.
I understand, Brian, that your neck, your cervical spine was fractured.
Yes, sir. I had a major surgery to repair it.
You see, he's in a lot of pain, right?
Yes, Your Honor.
I know that must tug on you, being that you've coached him for so long.
It does. It's hard to really, because of where we're at in a court of law.
Yes, sir.
I have to take the defensive, even though I don't like to say blame and all of that type of stuff, especially with one of my kids. But, one thing I can say is that he was given safety lessons.
What kind of safety lessons?
Well, actually, Your Honor, I actually brought an illustration. If you would allow me to, I could demonstrate some things for you.
Sure, I want to understand this, sir. Now, this is an exhibit that you submitted to this court. Tell me what we're looking at.
Coming up,
You have to recognize the nautical markers. You need to slow down so that you can come back into this area. Brian didn't slow down.
Brian, did you get safety instructions from Coach Gold? This court has consulted Dr. Hadari Brooks. How do you repair an injury like this?
So we use 2 plates and 4 screws. Plates and screws are designed to stay in your whole life.
So he will have these in until he's an old man.
Exactly.
Oh, your son struck his head like that?
He did, Your Honor.
Couldn't stop it and I couldn't control it.
He was given safety lessons.
What kind of safety lessons?
Well, actually, Your Honor, I actually brought an illustration. This here's the dock, right here, and this is where all the families were lined up at when I checked everything off.
Okay.
So I'm checking everything off back in this area here. Watercraft is here. They take off, they go, then they come back this way. First thing that I tell them, you have to wear your life vest. It's first thing, looked like that was done, that's the first one. Next thing is you have to travel at a safe rate of speed. Now, also you have to recognize the nautical markers, the no wake zones. You need to slow down so that you can come back into this area. Brian didn't slow down. So as he came this way, he realized where he was and he tried to come in, but he was going too fast. So he came in on this side.
Okay. So, Mr. Gold, you keep saying that you told them about safety. Who is them?
The parents and the children.
Brian, did you get safety instructions from Coach Gold?
Yes, Your Honor. He gave a short safety presentation and demo. I was trying to follow the rules, but I couldn't control it. I don't know what happened.
The same thing with putting him into a car. You just don't show him where everything is, give him the keys, say, go on. No, you...
Your expectation was that there was going to be somebody with him.
Absolutely.
Mine also. My expectation was that also.
So, Mr. Gold, did you ever think of riding with these kids?
No.
To make sure that all the safety stuff that you said would be adhered to?
No, this is why...
Or if the brakes work properly, maybe?
This is why I had them to actually sign off on an adult being with them.
So, Ms. Campbell, what's your understanding of what the future is like for your son?
We don't know, Your Honor. We don't know. Brian was being recruited by 4 major universities. He was supposed to make his decision in 3 weeks. We don't know if he'll ever play again.
Well, I want to get a better idea of the medical nature of his injuries. So this court has consulted Dr. Hadari Brooks, who's an orthopedic surgeon. We're going to hear from him. Sheriff, would you get Dr. Brooks?
Yes, Your Honor.
Hello, doctor. How are you?
Hello, Your Honor.
Could you state your name for the record?
Dr. D. Hadari Brooks.
Dr. Brooks, what's the nature of Brian's injuries?
Next,
I have an email that I actually sent to all the parents
Anyone under age 18 must be accompanied by an adult. Who did you think was going to ride with Brian on this day? For the record, you are Brian's older sister.
That is correct, Your Honor.
And you were there that day, right?
I was there.
What do you remember about this day? I think I've heard everything I need to hear. I'm ready to render my decision. Oh, your son struck his head like that?
He did, Your Honor.
Couldn't stop it. I couldn't control it.
I understand, Brian, that your neck, your cervical spine was fractured.
Yes, sir.
This court has consulted Dr. Hadari Brooks. Dr. Brooks, what's the nature of Brian's injury?
He sustained a broken arm, but his more significant injury was a fractured dislocation of his cervical spine.
And break that down in layman's terms. What's that mean?
Okay, and so the number of bones in the cervical spine are 7. Here, we can see a diagram of C3 sitting on top of C4. The front or the throat would be here, the back would be here. The important thing to note is that this C3 bone is sitting forward of the C4 bone. That's very bad because the spinal cord sits here, and when a bone moves forward, it can pull the nerves with it, it can tear a nerve, or it can stretch a nerve, and that can cause anything from paralysis to death.
So this is a very serious injury.
Very serious.
How do you repair an injury like this?
So we make an incision from the base of the skull down about 3 or 4 inches.
Okay.
You come through the fat, which is yellow here, red is muscle, and then now you're down to bone. So what you have to do is now stabilize C3 on top of C4. So we use 2 plates and 4 screws.
When does Brian get this equipment taken out of his neck?
So the plates and screws, believe it or not, are designed to stay in your whole life.
So he will have these in until he's an old man.
Exactly.
Doctor, thank you so much for your testimony. You are released.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Campbell, this has got to scare you to death.
It's a parent's worst nightmare.
Do you take any responsibility for not watching your son?
For that day,
Yes, ma'am.
absolutely not. And the only reason is because I was assigned to cook. I wasn't there. He knew I wasn't there. He asked me to cook.
Your Honor, I have an email that I actually sent to all the parents.
And you brought that with you?
I brought that with bailiff. Could you get
Sheriff, if you could get the email.
please.
Permission to ride, permission not to drive.
So, she signed that.
Permission to ride.
And do you recall getting an email, Ms. Campbell, of this sort?
Yes, Your Honor.
So the email reads, looking forward to seeing everyone. This is from you, Coach, right?
Yes.
Attached, please find a permission slip, safety tip brochure, and boater's guidelines. Anyone under age 18 must be accompanied by an adult if they are planning to ride the watercrafts. Well, who did you think was going to ride with Brian on this day?
The adult that his mother sent down there in a supervisory role, her daughter.
Did you send Veronica down in a supervisory role, as the coach says?
I did. I sent Veronica down to ride with Brian.
Veronica, will you stand and come to the podium, please? State your name for the court.
Veronica Campbell.
For the record, you are Brian's older sister.
That is correct, Your Honor.
And you were there that day, right?
I was there.
And you're 21 years old.
I am 21 years old.
What do you remember about this day?
Well, I was in line with my brother to go ride the watercraft.
Okay.
And I got a phone call that was from my boyfriend, and he's actually serving in the Air Force right now, and he was going through boot camp, and I hadn't heard from him in weeks. So, of course, I made a huge fuss over the excitement of this. I said, I got to take this, and I stepped away.
Did you tell
Gabriel.
him that you were stepping away?
I told everyone in line.
Did you see her step away from the line?
Not at all, Your Honor.
What were you doing?
You just asked her, did she tell me? And she could not say that she did.
I told everyone.
But Coach, wait a minute. Wait a minute, Coach.
Here that sent
Wait a minute,
somebody
wait a
out there
minute.
in a supervisory role that just wasn't made up to do it.
You-
Coach, hold on,
You're
hold on.
behind.
I want to go into the common sense zone. This is your property,
Yes.
your watercrafts,
Yes.
Yep.
your team,
Yes.
Yep.
even kind of your son,
Yes.
your responsibility.
Yeah, and I take some of the responsibility to the point of that it's my watercraft. But me, being the guy that I am with safety, Here's the pamphlet that I sent out.
A pamphlet.
They all read it. Well, let me change that. They all clicked on the link saying that they read it. I had
Coach, see the problem here. Here's the problem for me.
Okay.
You were the last line of defense.
And I'm saying the first line of defense is the parent. I did my part. It is not my fault.
I think I've heard everything I need to hear. I'm ready to render my decision.
The verdict is in.
Ms. Campbell, you believe that Coach Gold should have supervised your son when Veronica stepped away. And Coach, you say you told everybody, all the parents, be safe, and here's a link, here's a brochure, here's everything you need to keep your children safe.
Here's the pamphlet that I sent out. It is not my fault.
I hopped on the watercraft by myself, and I hit the throttle. There's a sandbar right in front of me.
And I sent Veronica down to ride with Brian.
I got a phone call, and I stepped away.
I'm ready to render my decision. Folks, in every personal injury case, the plaintiff, that is you, Ms. Campbell, on behalf of your son, Brian, must prove that Coach Gold committed a wrong and that his wrong caused Brian's injuries. Here today, you have shown that adult supervision was required. In fact, Coach, you expected adults to supervise the kids. Ms. Campbell, you believe that Coach Gold should have supervised your son when Veronica stepped away.
Absolutely.
And that when he didn't, he exposed your son to danger that left him in this hospital state with $200,000 in medical expenses and a really uncertain future. You hold him solely responsible for this.
Absolutely.
And Coach, you say you told everybody, all the parents, be safe, and here's a link, here's a brochure, here's everything you need to keep your children safe. The law looks at everybody's behavior. If Brian is out there under your supervision, you are responsible because you invited him to your property and you must take certain care because he's within your zone of safety. There's none of this. But as a parent, and frankly, beating up a little bit on Veronica stepping away, that's something I've got to consider. You not being there, I've got to consider that too. I find that you have proven that Mr. Gold was wrong, that he should have been supervising Brian. But I don't think he was all wrong. The law allows a judge like me to compare the conduct of people or compare their negligence or responsibility for an incident like this. It's called comparative negligence. Here, Mr. Gold, based on the evidence, I find you 50% responsible for Brian's injuries. Ms. Campbell, I find Brian 50% responsible for his own injuries. He was not a baby. The law requires that he take care of himself and be safe because safety applies to everyone. The law also requires me as a judge to weigh the negligence of the parties. Where it's 50-50, regardless of how severe the injuries are, I must find for Mr. Gold because the law says the plaintiffs lose when it's 50-50. Because you're 50-50 responsible, I find in your favor a verdict for the defendant. That is my final verdict, and this matter is adjourned. I don't want you to let this verdict slow you down or get in your way. You are going to be fine. Stay strong, heal well, and do the things that life has intended for you. I'm going to check up on you, actually.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.